First image we see a home with like the roof is blown off. You can only see the perimeter and maybe some kind of framing, I think it might be called, like some kind of support beams of wood, but you can see all the way into the home. It's like the roof has just been torn off, blown away. Some rubble we're seeing inside someone's home. I mean, just absolutely dust everywhere. It looks like it's been exploded. Yeah, look at this. You can see the like rebar in the walls of the home. I don't think this is light arms. I don't even think this is RPGs.
The frequency of fire at the thousands of terrorists was enormous at the start, and only at a certain point did the pilots begin to slow their attacks and carefully choose the targets.
This is that classic Israeli precise aerial strike. Look at them just spray and pray. Oh my god. Like it's a goddamn video game. This is unreal. And I know it was a chaotic situation, but holy shit. Let's get into this. We have an article from EI, the Electronic Intifada, from Osso and Stanley. Israel admits to immense, quote-unquote, amount of, quote-unquote, friendly fire on 7th October. Israel's army on Tuesday admitted that an immense and complex quantity of what it calls friendly fire incidents took place on the 7th of October. The key declaration was buried in the penultimate paragraph of an article by Yoav Zidon, the military correspondent of Israeli outlet Ynet. It's the first known official army admission that a significant number of the hundreds of Israelis who died on 7th October were killed by Israel itself, and not by Hamas or other Palestinian resistance factions. An Israeli police source last month appeared to admit that some of the Israelis at the supernova rave taking place near Gaza that day were hit by Israeli helicopters. A second police source later partially walked back the admission. Citing new data released by the Israeli military, Zitun wrote that casualties fell as a result of friendly fire on October 7th, but the IDF, the Israeli military, believes that it would not be morally sound to investigate them. He reported that this was due to the immense and complex quantity of them that took place in the kibbutzim and southern Israeli communities. The Ynet article also reports that, quote, at least 1/5 of the Israeli army deaths in Gaza since the ground invasion began were also due to friendly fire incidents. Israel has in recent weeks faced increased internal pressure to investigate the failings of 7th October. On Monday in Tel Aviv, family members of those Israelis who died on 7th October established a new group calling for an official government investigation to the events of that day. One of the speakers accused the governments of a quote-unquote cover-up. Israel does indeed appear to be covering up a lot of the evidence. The Jerusalem Post reported recently that cars containing the bloodstains or ashes of Israelis who died on October 7th would be crushed, and in what the paper said was a first, buried in a cemetery. The paper provided a religious pretext for all of this. Nonetheless, this is a worrying development which amounts to a state-sanctioned cover-up of what could potentially be some of the most important forensic evidence from 7th October. Since that day, there has been a steadily growing mountain of evidence that many, if not most, Israelis killed that day were killed by Israel itself. The evidence that has been reported in English almost entirely by independent media, including the Electronic Intifada, the Grey Zone, the Cradle, and Mondo Weiss. In one of the most recent revelations, an Israeli Air Force colonel admitted to a Hebrew podcast that they blew up Israeli homes in the settlements, but insisted they never did so, quote, without permission. Colonel Nof Erez also said that October 7th was a, quote, mass Hannibal, end quote, event. A reference to a controversial Israeli military doctrine, the Hannibal Doctrine. Named after an ancient Carthaginian general who poisoned himself rather than be captured alive, the Hannibal Directive allows Israeli forces to take any means necessary to stop Israelis being captured alive, even at the cost of killing the captives. Very harrowing indications here of the IDF firing on Israelis. And this is 12th of December 2023. And I should say, when I say indications, there was a, quote, admission, right? a quote from a colonel, I believe it was. Yes, it was a mass Hannibal event. And there was a separate quote, an Israeli force colonel admitted to a Hebrew broadcast that they blew up Israeli homes in the settlements, but insisted they never did so without permission. So this was ordered, right? This wasn't, this was from the official chain of command. They were ordered, is what was admitted by this colonel. So I have a few articles here. Let's jump from the 12th of December 2023, which is less than a year since October 7th, 2023. This is February 22nd, 2024. New evidence emerges of Israel killing its own civilians. So this is an article from 22nd February 2024 from Ali Abunimah. And this is new evidence emerges of Israel killing its own civilians. Had to repeat for the cut because I don't know if you know this, I'm recording this for YouTube. So that's why I went ahead and restarted there. Let's give this some air and then go ahead and start reading. Did the Israeli military kill its own citizens on October 7th, 2023? Regular readers of the Electronic Intifada know that it did. Israel claims that Hamas or other Palestinian fighters killed 1,200 Israelis on October 7th, but as our reporting since that day shows, a significant, though as yet undetermined, number were killed by Israeli forces using tank shells and helicopter gunships. These killings were due to a combination of panicked, indiscriminate fire and application of the Hannibal Doctrine, an Israeli military procedure that allows its forces to prevent the capture of Israelis by any means, even if that means killing them. The video above by the YouTube channel GDF neatly summarizes much of the Electronic Intifada's reporting in just over 12 minutes. We may watch that. That's a good amount of time for me. I have ADHD. Looking into friendly fire incidents on 7th October can make people targets for slander and misrepresentation. They can easily be described as conspiracy theorists and the like, the narrator states, adding one of the very few, if not the only outlet that has continuously covered the topic is the Electronic Intifada. It's true. By merely updating its readership on the known facts of friendly fire incidents over the course of October 7th and afterward, they have been targeted with at least one attack article from the Washington Post where they were lumped in with right-winger Holocaust deniers saying they exaggerated claims, the narrator says. Indeed, in January, the Electronic Intifada was the target of a scurrilous smear. What a word, scurrilous. By that prominent American newspaper, an attack that had done nothing to deter us from pursuing the truth. New incident revealed. Almost all the information about so-called friendly fire incidents on October 7th comes from Israeli sources and media, and yet this is rarely reported in mainstream Western outlets, which continue to stick closely to Israel's official propaganda narratives. But even in the Israeli media, the information has trickled out slowly. Seemingly each week, a new piece of evidence comes out. Indeed, on Thursday, Haaretz revealed yet another such incident. The Israeli newspaper reports that an Israeli man escaped from the supernova rave, where Israeli forces had fired on civilians, only to be fatally shot when he reached what he thought would be the safety of kibbutz Alumim, a nearby colonial settlement. Oftek Atun and his girlfriend Tamar fled the Nova outdoor rave by car as rockets started flying overhead. The couple drove north until security personnel from a nearby community directed them to kibbutz Alumim, Haaretz reports. At the kibbutz, the couple frantically banged on doors before storming into the home of an elderly couple who were taking shelter inside of their safe room. I presume a safe room is... I mean, frankly, you only see this in the movies with really wealthy people. I don't mean to slander anyone here, but yeah, I think it takes some money. It's kind of armored, protected, has some kind of a security lock, and I think in the event of being robbed, or it seems like in the event of wartime like this, it's almost like a bomb shelter, right? It's almost like a bomb shelter that you would have in your own residence, so you don't have to go far. It's right outside maybe. But I think a safe room refers to being within the residence. So it is inside your home. You don't have to leave your home to get into that safe space, secured space. Where were we? Safe room. Yes. Thinking that the terrorists had just broken into their home, the homeowners called the kibbutz volunteer security squad for help. As Oftek and Tamar were hiding inside the house, the security squad arrived, accompanied by a kibbutz resident soldier, and discreetly evacuated the elderly couple through the safe room window, the account states. The soldier then entered the house through the window with a pistol in hand, while a security squad member provided cover through the window. According to a member of the community security squad, Atun and the soldier got into a fight, and the soldier shot Atun many times, mistaking him for a terrorist, Haaretz says. According to Tamar, Ofek was shot dead without any prior struggle. Tamar was herself then shot in the stomach by Israeli soldiers, but lived to tell the tale. It's horrifying. Would this story have come out if she had been killed, or would there have been another attempted cover-up, similar to the failed effort to hide how Israeli forces shelled a home, killing a number of Israeli civilians at Kibbutz Be'eri, I believe it's pronounced. In December, the Israeli military admitted to a, quote, immense and complex quantity, end quote, of friendly fire incidents on October 7th, but is refusing to investigate them, claiming that to do so would not be, quote-unquote, morally sound. I believe I remember this kind of phrasing around the sexual assaults and rape allegations around this time, that there was, I forget their name, that there was a kind of religious leader, I believe it was, a religious but also political leader, like kind of campaign advisor kind of person. What is it? Zakat, I think it is. Zakat organization, like humanitarian organization. But this person is, I believe, known to be a religious extremist. Believes in Greater Israel and these kinds of very violent Zionist ideologies. And I believe this was the argument that this person from, I believe it's Zakat organization was talking about. All right, let's learn about what happened on October 7th. This is a video from GDF. I think they have these kind of they have these like Zionism videos. I think they had a really popular one about like the sexy IDF thing, or is that a different channel? Like the IDF babes, quote unquote, like the TikTok, Instagram thing happening. No, okay, that's a different channel. How the Viet Cong smoked American soldiers. I think I might have watched that, because that sounds pretty fucking cool. That's a fucking cool video name. How the Irish got so good at smoking British soldiers. Also a cool title. Good name. How the Iraqis got good at smoking American soldiers. Oh my god! Oh my god! Who are you? Can I have your autograph? It's like the fucking wrestling. What's his name? Okay. That's neither here nor there. Today's a serious stream. No gaming. Look at this scene. This is like absolutely unreal. This is like so surreal. This is like something out of a movie. Like Day After Tomorrow, right? Where the ground opens up like an actual natural disaster. This is so terrifying. Every account I've read was that this was like the most chaotic military thing ever. That like no one knew what was going on. People were scrambling. I think there was a report that, and this got glazed over as well. I need to find the source of this. But the morning of October 7th, there was intel that Israeli intelligence, Israeli army, IDF, IOF even, had received that said there would be an attack, right? That they would cross the border into Israel. And they ignored it because they underestimated them. And they said there's no way. So this is like really bad. Intelligence failure October 7th. Morning. Combating Terrorism Center at West Point. Okay, let's see what West Point has to say. Not usually my first source. From the CTC Sentinel. Ah, it looks so stately and cool. Look at this shit. What, they got the fucking... Oh my god! How do you make this shit? Combating Terrorism Center at West Point. Objective, relevant, rigorous. October 2024, Volume 17, Issue 9. They got this like... Oh, they're both Israeli soldiers. I think they both got the flag. Okay. I thought it was like US-Israel handshake in the fucking photo op. I thought it was literally like G.I. Joe on the left and Netanyahu's, bootlicker on the right. And they're like, oh yeah, bro, like we got him. Killed another terrorist. 1 year after October 11th, an assessment of the intelligence failings with a giant ass Israeli flag, like they just are doing a victory lap on the football pitch. Like they just fucking won something, which they never do. The sports world hates Israel right now. A draw is a win. The Houthis after 1 year of war. All right. What do they have to say? Abstract. Hours after the Hamas attack of October 7th began, they were widely attributed to an apparent Israeli intelligence failure, with pundits pointing to several possible sources, including a misunderstanding of Hamas's intentions, cognitive biases, and an over-reliance on the country's technological superiority. To date, however, there have been few systematic analyses that examine in detail the various causes of... Okay. So where's the part where they ignored the thing in the morning? Yeah, morning. As the Times of Israel noted, Haliva was quoted as later telling those around him that even if he had participated in the consultation, he would have concluded that it was apparently a drill, and dealing with the matter could wait until the morning. This is about Hamas gathering at the border, right? At the what is that called? Like the safety zone, demilitarization zone, or whatever. The checkpoints, right? The Israeli armed border, the military border for the occupation of Palestine. Let's be clear about that, because I'm trying to be as precise as possible with my language. Let's be incisive here. So they knew hours before Hamas's attack, and they said it was a drill. It could wait until the morning. They didn't want to do it in the late hours of the night, like 4 a.m. or whatever. And can we just go back over here, like the glazing of Israel, although they have the technological superiority. This is like when you're like in a job interview and they're like, what are your weaknesses? And you're like, well, I have a very high attention to detail and I'm always on time to things. And it's just the worst. It's my biggest flaw is that I'm just such a good employee. I'm a great worker. That might be my biggest flaw as a worker, is that I'm just so goddamn good that it's disgusting. You wouldn't want to hire me. It's just that bad. A misunderstanding of Hamas's intentions. What the fuck? What the fuck? I think that's the only good commentary I can provide on that one. I'm gonna have to stoop to the surface level. But an over-reliance on the country's technological superiority is Wow. Glaze alert. Glaze alert. I think West Point and Israel. Need to get a room already. Let's watch this video.
I know everyone's a little curious about the subject. Did the Israeli military kill its own citizens on October 7th and the days afterward? Can all of the 1,200 deaths be laid at Hamas's door? Well, most people appear to be reluctant to look into it. After all, looking into friendly fire incidents on October 7th can make people targets for slander and misrepresentation. They can easily be described as conspiracy theorists and the like. One of the very few, if not the only outlet that has continuously covered the topic is the Electronic Intifada.
Oh, hold up. I'm going to try to copy this. Put it in the title.
By merely updating its readership on the known facts of friendly fire incidents over the course of October 7th and afterward, they have been targeted with at least one attack article from the Washington Post, where they were lumped in with right-wing Holocaust deniers, saying they exaggerated claims. Obviously, the Electronic Intifada weren't fazed by it and continued reporting. So, relying off of their work and the work of others as well, I've created a little bit of a timeline of the reports of friendly fire incidents on October 7th and afterward in order to lay out simply what we know so far. This is inconclusive, and I've already waited for some time to make a video on it since I wanted some time to pass for more information to be known. We don't know how many of the 1,200 deaths can be attributed to Israel or Hamas, but we can't attribute all of them to Hamas. Indeed, the Hamas killed 1,200 Israelis line, which has been a key justification for the ongoing genocide and deliberately induced famine in Gaza, can be shown to be demonstrably false. Let's get started. One of the first reports of friendly fire on October 7th came just days later, on October 15th, in the Israeli Yediot Aharonot. Excerpts from the article, written by Yoav Zeitun, went viral on Twitter, including the following. After the pilots realized that it was very difficult to distinguish between terrorists and Israeli soldiers or civilians, the decision was made that the first objective of the fighter helicopters is to stop the deluge of terrorists. 28 fighter helicopters shot over the course of the day all of the ammunition in their bellies. We are talking about hundreds of 30mm cannon mortars and Hellfire missiles. The frequency of fire at the thousands of terrorists was enormous at the start, and only at a certain point did the pilots begin to slow their attacks and carefully choose the targets.
This is that classic Israeli precise aerial strike. Look at them just spray and pray. Oh my god. Like it's a goddamn video game. This is unreal. And I know it was a chaotic situation, but holy shit.
According to the Air Force, in the first 4 hours of the start of the battles, helicopters and fighter craft attacked about 300 targets, most in Israeli territory. As early as October 20th, Nir Hassan writes for Haaretz about an incident at the kibbutz Be'eri. Hassan spoke with a resident named Tuval Eskapim, and according to him, only on Monday night, and only after the commanders in the field made difficult decisions, including shelling houses with all their occupants inside in order to eliminate the terrorists along with the hostages, did the IDF complete the takeover of the kibbutz.
Shelling homes? What was it? With hostages inside to eliminate the terrorists? They were literally ordered to fire in crowds, right? They were ordered to go ahead with the, I'm not a military person, but like the danger close, you know, civilians are close, allies are close, haul, and maybe even worse than that, right? They knew they were in the kill zone. They knew they were in the kill zone, and they literally went with the nuclear option to destroy the whole building because of a failure, honestly, of not only their intelligence, but their military. I think this was a big wake-up call that really, their military projects strength, but wow. Wow, this is the most advanced military in the world, they claim. Most precise, most moral army.
The price was...
They have the most advanced weapons, okay? They have the state-of-the-art weapons, don't get me wrong. But it's like giving a toddler a rocket launcher. Like, that's what this is. They have US supplied weapons. They have bunker busters. They have fucking bomber jets, fighter jets, multi-role jets. And all the fuel, all the money, all the labor to exploit, right, through the Western hegemony, right, of the global supply chains. The fact that they have tech companies in Israel. Why do you think they have tech companies in Israel? It's a very young country. It's a young country, 1948. Less than 100 years. Why is it that they have so much tech? Why have they attracted so much, not just tech, right? But finance. Finance is what really makes things move, right? We have the New York Stock Exchange here in Tokyo. Tokyo is another huge market because they are a vassal state of the US empire. They don't even have a military. They don't have a standing army. The United States nuked them, put their military bases all over, and now their economy is tied to the United States. You see the Pokemon shit? Destiny Bond, the move Destiny Bond? If the US economy dies, so does Japan, and it's happened before. In the 2008 financial crisis, the global financial crisis, yes, US got hit hard. Yes, Europe got hit hard. Britain got hit hard. Germany got hit hard. France got hit hard. They had to rebuild so much and they lost so much. And that translates to people's lives being affected. People die. People go sick and die when number goes down. I know the stock bros and Bitcoin bros just jerk off when number goes higher. They don't care. They're just making money and like high on that shit. But when it goes down from all of this foolhardy gambling, all of this gluttonous, infinite growth mindset, capitalist, exploitive nonsense, it's going to be really bad, I fear. And I hope I'm wrong, but I digress. There goes Uncle Artie talking off again. All right, let's go. Let's go. The Barry Hassan incident.
All their occupants inside, in order to eliminate the terrorists along with the hostages, did the IDF complete the takeover of the kibbutz. The price was terrible. At least 112 Be'eri people were killed. Others were kidnapped. Yesterday, 11 days after the massacre, the bodies of a mother and her son were discovered in one of the destroyed houses. It is believed that more bodies are still lying in the rubble. Another witness, Israeli Lieutenant Colonel Salman Habaka, spoke to The Guardian's Peter Beaumont on November 2nd. I arrived in Be'eri to see Brigadier General Barak Hiram, and the first thing he asked me is to fire a shell into a house where Hamas was sheltering. The first question that comes to your mind is, are there hostages there? We did all the preliminary checks before we decided to fire a shell into a house. And then we went from house to house to free the hostages. And that's how the fighting was until the evening in the kibbutz and in the streets. The New York Times would go on to provide a revealing quote from the commander of Israeli forces at Kibbutz Be'eri, the aforementioned Brigadier General Barak Hiram. The Israeli commander who led the fight detailed how he had authorized tank fire to end what was already an hours-long standoff, even at the cost of civilian casualties. Another survivor of the Kibbutz Be'eri incident, Yasmin Porat provided her testimony to radio host Arya Golan for his program This Morning, hosted on the state radio station Khan, which subsequently went viral.
יש 5 בני ערובה ששוכבים או 6 על האדמה בחוץ, ממש כצאן לטבח מול הירי של הימ"מ שלנו והמחבלים.
הטרוריסטים ירו בהם?
לא, הם נהרגו מהחילופי ירי, תבין שהיה חילופי ירי מאוד מאוד קשים.
זאת אומרת, יכול להיות שזה כוחותינו ירו בהם? כשניסו לחסל את החוטפים, את החמאס?
הם חיסלו את כולם, כולל הבני ערובה, כי היה שם חילופי ירי מאוד מאוד קשים, שהיה חילופי אש מטורפים, אפילו 2 פקזים של טנק שירו לתוך הבית, שזה בית קיבוצי קטן.
The Electronic Intifada attributes this ruthless response from Israeli commanders to the Hannibal Directive, a protocol that allows Israeli forces to use overwhelming force to kill one of their own captured soldiers rather than allow them to be taken prisoner. The rationale for the Hannibal Directive is to avoid allowing an enemy to have captives that can be used in prisoner exchange negotiations. The next month, on November 16th, in an interview with Israeli diplomat and advisor Mark Regev on the Mehdi Hassan show, Regev provides a revealing admission.
We originally said in the atrocious Hamas attack on our people on October 7th, we had the number at 1,400 casualties, and now we've revised that down to 1,200 because we understood that we had overestimated. We made a mistake. There were actually bodies that were so badly burnt, we thought they were ours. In the end, apparently, they were Hamas terrorists.
Yeah, why were they so badly burned?
Ali Abunimah observed,
they're going to get to this, but I think all of the analysis I've read, all of the sources I've read said Hamas had light arms. Maybe they had some, I don't know, very simple small explosives kinds of things. I don't know what these are called, like plastic explosives. Like C4. Right? Like very small, very light. But I don't think they had, you know, much more than AK-47s, grenades, you know, light arms. The things that they were showing, the tank shelling of a home, for example, they don't have Merkava tanks. They don't have any tanks. Not that I know of. This is a resistance army. And the damage that they're pointing to and blaming Hamas for is so, you know, the kill zone, the damage that is left, the rubble that is left, is not consistent with light arms fire, with AK-47s, even with rocket-propelled grenade and hand grenade kinds of things. Again, I'm not a military guy. I just play games and read about things. I've been socialized as a boy, as a man, right? So these things are cool to me. They've been socialized as cool to me, and I play games that have these kinds of things. That's my knowledge about this. I am not an expert. But to me, a layperson, not an expert, it really looks inconsistent with Hamas's capability and what actually happened, what the aftermath was. Let's continue.
Makes no sense that 200 bodies burned beyond recognition that Israel thought were Israeli civilians could turn out to be Hamas fighters unless Israel killed people indiscriminately. Just 2 days later, Haaretz published an article by Josh Briner about how Hamas didn't have prior knowledge of the Nova Music Festival. One sentence in particular reveals, apparently, the first direct official Israeli acknowledgement of Israeli friendly fire on October 7th and afterward. According to a police source, the investigation also indicates that an IDF combat helicopter that arrived to the scene and fired at terrorists there apparently also hit some festival participants.
Yeah, apparently. Look at this video. You're in a fucking moving helicopter shooting like a stream of bullets. And again, I'm a gamer. I'm not an army guy. I'm a gamer. But in a video game, when you're doing something like this, you're not trying to hit every single bullet, right? You are almost like a shower setting on a hose. You're spraying the whole target in a wide area, hoping that some of those, particles, your water, your bullets, are going to hit where you want to hit, presumably the terrorists here that they're targeting. So they know that the kill zone here is ginormous. They know the possibility of collateral damage is enormous here. And then they've gone back and completely projected the blame, completely shifted the blame to Hamas. Right? Every accusation is an admission. Let's continue.
December 5th, reservist hit some festival participants. December 5th, reservist Colonel Nof Eretz is featured on the Haaretz podcast The Week.
משם הגיעו כנראה גם השמועות שהצבא הפציץ כל מיני בתים בתוך היישובים, גם נוהל קניבל, כל מיני תיאוריות קונספירציה שרצו בימים הראשונים.
לא הפציצו.
Let's go back. I want to do the live translation here.
Colonel Nof Eretz is featured on the Haaretz podcast The Week.
משם הגיעו כנראה גם השמועות
Apparently that is also the source.
כל מיני
Oh, it's too fast.
Haaretz podcast The Week.
משם הגיעו כנראה גם השמועות.
Apparently that is also the source of the rumors that the army exploded all kinds of houses inside the settlements.
כל מיני בתים בתוך היישובים, גם נוהל קניבל.
The Hannibal Directive and all kinds of conspiracy theories
תיאוריות קונספירציה שרצו
running around in the first few days.
לא הפציצו.
And this is someone else talking to the colonel, I believe the host of the Haaretz podcast. They didn't explode houses without permission.
בתים ללא אישור. גם פקודה.
And the Hannibal Directive that is also being talked about
חניבל שמדברים עליה, היא פקודה
is
של
a command for stopping the capture of a single vehicle. So this must be the colonel responding, actually. The colonel is responding to the podcast host that it's a command. The Hannibal Directive is a command for stopping the capture of a single vehicle.
חטיפה של רכב בודד, נכתבה על
authored on the basis of kidnappings carried out in Lebanon 30 years ago.
חטיפות שנעשו בלבנון כבר לפני 30 שנה. האם
that the attack helicopter or drone that identifies the vehicle
או לכתמ"ם שמזהה את הרכב, האם הוא יפתח
will fire upon the vehicle itself in order to prevent the kidnapping
החטיפה הזאת בכל מחיר.
at any cost, obviously also at the cost of harm to the hostage.
וזה קרה פעם?
And the host is asking, and did it happen this time? Was there a hostage harmed this time?
נוהל חניבל.
And Colonel Nof Erez responds, the Hannibal Directive was apparently applied at a certain stage on October 7th. Because he didn't say October 7th, I'm adding that in there. They're talking about October 7th. And Colonel continues, because the moment they realize there is a kidnapping, they immediately say, guys, this is Hannibal. This was a mass Hannibal. It was an impossible mission to identify it and to do what they did.
December 12th.
And I believe he's referring to responding on October 7th. He's responding, or he's saying, the impossible mission is that of the IOF, the Israeli army, to respond to the attack, to you know, the call to arms, responding to that call to arms in response to the sirens being raised, the alarms being raised that they were under attack. Israel had been attacked by Hamas on October 7th. Let's continue.
Comes another shocking admission from the Israeli army, reported in the Israeli Yediot Ahronoth. Casualties fell as a result of friendly fire on October 7th, but the IDF believes that beyond the operational investigations of the events, it would not be morally sound to investigate these incidents due to the immense and complex quantity of them that took place in the kibbutzim and southern Israeli communities due to the challenging situations the soldiers were in at the time. This policy of just simply refusing to investigate friendly fire incidents might also explain a bizarre decision by the State of Israel to bury hundreds of cars with ashes and bloodstains, as reported by the Jerusalem Post. For the first time ever, they will bury entire vehicles. Some of the cars have bloodstains or ashes that are difficult to collect for various technical reasons that have to do with the way these individuals were killed. In order to save space and be as environmentally friendly as possible, the cars may be shredded before being buried. The underlying rationale behind this initiative is to maximize space efficiency by compacting the existing vehicles. A major expose arrived in the new year on January 12th in Yediot Ahronoth, written by Yoav Zaiton and Ronan Bergman, who report that what happened on October 7th and afterward constituted a long series of failures, mishaps, and chaos in the army. The article is worth quoting at length. The IDF decided to apply a directive similar to the Hannibal Directive, in the course of which they also shot at vehicles that may have been carrying captives. This is the question at the heart of the investigation. Where was the Israel Defense Force in the first hours of the morning of October 7th? In those same hours, some of the hardest, most embarrassing, and infuriating chapters in the history of the Army were also written. This includes a command chain that failed almost entirely and was entirely blindsided, and orders to open fire on terrorist vehicles speeding towards Gaza, even as there was a concern that they contained captives, some sort of renewed version of the Hannibal Directive. The officers of the UAV squadron, UAV as an unmanned aerial vehicle, understood that there was no point for them to wait for orders from the Air Force Command or from the Gaza Division. They did manage to get in touch with the division and essentially asked that all procedures, orders, and regulations be tossed in the trash. You have authority to fire at will, the Zeke operators were told by the division, Zeke as in the Elbit Hermes 450. In other words, shoot at anything that looks threatening or like an enemy. The officers faced dilemmas of life and death. Where should they direct the helicopter gunships and the Zeke first? To the dozens of breaches in the fence through which the terrorists continue to arrive? To the posts currently occupied by the terrorists, where they were killing hundreds of soldiers and taking others as captives back into Gaza? Or should it be in the direction of Sderot or the kibbutzim, where the civilians were being brutalized? Eventually, the commanders sent the Apache pilots a command that has never appeared in any standing order. You have permission until further notice and throughout the entire area. Even almost 6 hours after the fact, the fog covering that status evaluation was immense. This was the moment at which the IDF decided to return to a version of the Hannibal directives.
The following is an excerpt from an interview with former Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, broadcast by Israel's Channel 12 on 6th of February 2025. It is shared here for news reporting and analysis purposes. The translation is done by David Sheen for the Electronic Intifada. When you see the convoys crossing the border with Israeli hostages, what crosses your mind? Is the Hannibal Directive something you are thinking about at that moment? Just to explain, this is in the video, they're explaining. Just to explain, the Hannibal Directive says to shoot to kill when there's a vehicle containing an Israeli hostage. I want you to understand, this is Yoav Gallant responding, I want you to understand that the ability of the defense minister to give timely operative instructions when everything is happening is very limited. Was the order, this is the interviewer asking again, was the order given for the Hannibal Directive? And Yoav Gallant responding, I think that tactically in various places it was given. And in other places it was not given, and that is a problem. Wow. That's a great primer for what we're about to read. Lost the window. Army was ordered to kill Israelis on 7th October. Defense Minister confirms. We just watched this video. This is from Asa Winstanley again. Excellent reporting from Asa Winstanley. Excellent investigative journalist. Again, great work from Electronic Intifada. Please give them a follow. They're on YouTube. Really great work. They're on all the social media as well, wherever they haven't been banned. Israeli troops were ordered to shoot and kill captive Israeli civilians on October 7th, 2023. Israel's then defense minister admitted this week. This order to carry out Israel's so-called Hannibal Directive was issued tactically, quote-unquote, and quote-unquote in various places next to Gaza, Yoav Gallant told Israel's Channel 12 on Thursday. This is in the video we just watched. In other places, it was not given, and that is a problem, he continued. Questioning Gallant, journalist Amit Segal clarified for viewers that the Hannibal Directive says to shoot to kill when there is a vehicle containing an Israeli hostage, a characterization Gallant did not contest. Gallant was speaking in his first interview with Israeli television since being fired in November. You can watch a subtitle clip in the video above, which was watched. First public admission. Contrary to Gallant's statement that the Hannibal Directive was unevenly applied in different areas, Israeli newspaper Yediot Ahronot reported in January 2024 that at midday on October 7th, an unambiguous order was given from the high command of the Israeli military to invoke the Hannibal Directive across the entire region. The order came, quote, even if this means the endangerment or harming of the lives of civilians in the region, including the captives themselves, Israeli journalists Ronen Bergman and Yoav Zitun reported. In July, Israeli newspaper Haaretz reported that the order, quote, not a single vehicle can return to Gaza, end quote, was issued to the Gaza division of the Israeli military at 11:22 that day. But Gallant's new statement is highly significant as the first public admission by a contemporary Israeli minister that their troops were ordered to fire on their own people on October 7th. A military doctrine first issued in secret by Israeli generals in the 1980s, the Hannibal Directive is Israel's national murder-suicide pact. Initially, it stated that, when issued, Israeli troops could fire on other Israeli troops who had just been captured by Palestinian or other Arab resistance fighters. But on October 7th, 2023, in an unprecedented military offensive, Palestinian fighters recaptured land next to the Gaza Strip, which had been lost to the Israelis in 1948. Roughly 250 Israeli soldiers and civilians were captured by Hamas and other Palestinian armed groups in what they called Operation Al-Aqsa Flood. Israel's response was to reactivate and unleash the Hannibal Doctrine, extending it to Israeli civilians as well as soldiers. Fire from Israeli helicopters, drones, tanks, and even ground troops was deliberately unleashed in a failed attempt to prevent Palestinian fighters from taking live Israeli captives who would then be later exchanged for Palestinian prisoners. Roughly 1,100 Israelis were killed. It's still unclear exactly how many of these were killed by Israelis and how many by Palestinians. 1 year on, an investigation by the Electronic Intifada found that at least, quote, hundreds were killed by Israel. Official figures published for the first time last month revealed that the Israeli Air Force fired 11,000 shells, dropped more than 500 heavy 1-ton bombs, and launched 180 missiles during the fighting on October 7th. I think this is a very significant sentence, and I think that's why it was broken out to be its own line here. During the fighting on October 7th, quote, during the fighting, 11,000 shells, I think those are tank shells, 500 1-ton bombs, I think those would be from jet airplane, basically, fighter jets, multi-role fighter jets, and 180 missiles. I don't know if those are mobile or if those are at a missile site. I don't know how that works. But that's an extraordinary amount of firepower. And I want to get to the car graveyard. There's a monument in Israel for the vehicles that were damaged on this October 7th battle, if you will, right, during this event. And I want to get to that because I think that shows some hard evidence, and also just seeing the vehicles and seeing the destruction of the homes, I think that's going to be very elucidating. There's an Electronic Intifada video Even this one here. Let's see, this is an older video.
It's about how.
Yeah. But this was at the cutting edge of the journalism. December 20th, 2023. Okay. Very shortly after the attack had happened. Let's dive in.
You can see the headline there on screen. Israel admits to, quote, immense amount of what it calls friendly fire on the 7th of October. This is a short story I did just about the admission in Ynet by the military correspondent of Ynet, Yoav Zitun, who wrote just that. He wrote that that according to, well, let me get the exact quote up on screen. It's
while you do that, while you look for that quote, Asa, I'll also comment that for us, the most important part of the story written by Yoav Zitun was sort of buried in the second to last paragraph, and it wasn't the headline. We'll come to. I want to talk about what the headline of the story was, but for us, the most important news in this story was buried in that penultimate paragraph.
Right, exactly. And unlike a lot of other of these stories about the 7th of October that have come out in the Israeli press, this one was translated into English. And the story in general was about how since the Israeli incursion into the Gaza Strip, we talked about casualties earlier in the stream, but they say that a certain number. What is it now, John? What are they saying now? It's 100 dead, is it?
135. I want to make sure we have a good audio here.
You can see the headline there on screen. Israel admits to, quote, immense amount of what it calls friendly fire on the 7th of October. This is a short story I did just about the admission in Ynet by the military correspondent of Ynet, Yoav Zitun, who wrote just that. He wrote that that according to, well, let me get the exact quote up on screen. It's
while you do that, while you look for that quote, Asa, I'll also comment that for us, the most important part of the story written by Yoav Zitun was sort of buried in the second to last paragraph, and it wasn't the headline. We'll come to. I want to talk about what the headline of the story was, but for us, the most important news in this story was buried in that penultimate paragraph.
Right, exactly. And unlike a lot of other of these stories about the 7th of October that have come out in the Israeli press, this one was translated into English. And the story in general was about how since the Israeli incursion into the Gaza Strip, we talked about casualties earlier in the stream, but they say that a certain number. What is it now, John? What are they saying now? It's 100 dead, is it?
Right at the time of the story, it was 105, I think. Now they're admitting to, I think, as of this morning, 116. But
that's not including October 7th. That's just the soldiers in the Strip.
But Asa, I don't know if you have that quote from your Zitun, but I think we should actually read it because it's so telling, especially the way that it's buried. Or I have it up here, I think.
I got it too.
Okay,
So the article is about how friendly fire has been happening. So-called friendly fire has been happening in the Gaza Strip. Basically, soldiers have been accidentally shooting each other while invading the Gaza Strip. But then at the end of this article, in the penultimate paragraph, it says this: casualties fell as a result of friendly fire on October 7, but the IDF, the so-called Israeli Defense Force, the Israeli military, believes that beyond the operational investigations of the events, it would not be morally sound to investigate these incidents due to the immense and complex quantity of them that took place in the kibbutzim and southern Israeli communities due to the challenging situations the soldiers were in at the time. End of quote. So this is a huge admission buried really towards the end of this article. You know, we have the military correspondent of one of Israel's most important mainstream media outlets saying that the Israeli military believes that there was an immense and complex quantity of so-called friendly fire incidents in the kibbutzim and in the southern Israeli communities. And this is exactly what we've been talking about.
That's what we've been saying all along from the very beginning, and we were reporting it. Of course, we had the
I thought it would open up.
Testimony of Yasmin Porat, who survived the massacre at Kibbutz Be'eri, and in the last couple of days, the other Israeli woman who survived that massacre, Hadass Dagan, has also spoken for the first time to Israeli media, and she confirmed what Yasmin Porat said, that basically it was the tank shells that killed all the Israelis, including the little girl you see on the screen right now, Liel Hatzroni. So this is now, we have this admission, but we have something else. Tamara, I'm going to ask if you can put this up on the screen for us. I've just sent you this tweet I did, but it contains the images that I want to show exactly. So this op-ed appeared in Haaretz yesterday in the English edition and in the Hebrew edition. And it says, and that photo there is actually from Kibbutz Be'eri. And what we've been saying all along is that Kibbutz Be'eri, the images that show all these devastated and demolished houses are clearly the result of tank shelling, not the small arms that Hamas fighters were carrying. And as Yasmin Porat,
the small arms, light arms, it's inconsistent.
Hamas fighters, in her words, treated the Israelis in the kibbutz humanely. That was her word, be'ofen anushi in Hebrew, in a humane manner. And what now this article in Haaretz is calling for is saying, did Israel implement the so-called Hannibal Directive, which allows the military to endanger a soldier to prevent them from being kidnapped at the hostage-taking incident in Be'eri on October 7th. And Tamara, I don't know if we're able to show the other image or quote from this article, because the writer of this article asks directly, did Israel, here we go, we must determine exactly what happened that day being October 7th.
Yes.
Was there a decision to eliminate the terrorists, even if there was a significant risk that the hostages would also be killed?
Excellent journalism.
The Hannibal Directive applied to civilians.
Excellent journalism.
Just saying, the author of this article is not just saying that Israeli civilians may have been killed accidentally as a result of indiscriminate fire. She's going further and asking, was the Hannibal Directive applied? In other words, was there a decision to open fire knowing that Israeli civilians would be killed? And of course, Asa, you'll recall the previous story you did just a few days ago about how an Israeli colonel admitted in Haaretz podcast that to use his term, a mass Hannibal was applied on October 7th. And this, in fact, lines up with the evidence, which is the hundreds of burned bodies, incinerated bodies, the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of incinerated cars, civilian cars, the footage we saw and we reported on over the last few weeks from Israeli helicopters of the Apache helicopters just strafing civilians indiscriminately. And of course, the tank shelling against the houses and the witness testimonies. All of that lines up, that physical evidence lines up with what Israelis themselves are saying and have been saying. What it doesn't line up with is the idea that the Hamas fighters did all that, because how were they going to do all that with their AK-47s, maybe some hand grenades,
exactly,
maybe the odd RPG? But
it just doesn't add up.
the type of weapons.
It just doesn't add up. I hope we get to see the cars.
Not artillery to flatten a house wholesale.
Absolutely, or to incinerate literally hundreds of cars, highways of death that could only have been done by the kind of weapons Israel possesses. Now, just to go back for a moment to the story that you reported on most recently, Asa, the one we just showed a moment ago, this story, the headline of your Avzitun story, again, this is in Ynet, one of the main publications in Israel, is that 1 in 5 of the soldiers that Israel admits were killed in Gaza since the ground operation began. So now we're not talking about October 7th. We're talking about the ground invasion of Gaza, which began in mid to late October, after around 2 weeks or so after October 7th. So they're saying, according to the figures they're admitting to, as John has already told us, these figures are probably almost certainly a huge undercount. But they're saying, the Israelis are saying, 20% of our soldiers were killed by our soldiers.
Wow.
And this is in the context
20%.
Of a commanded and controlled military operation where presumably the Israelis believe that they are taking the initiative and they're on the offensive, and they're still killing 1 in 5 of their own soldiers.
Yeah.
What would be the case on October 7th when we know that the Gaza division, the Southern Command, completely collapsed? There was no command and control. According to the helicopter pilots and the accounts they've given in the Israeli press, they had no one giving them orders. They were just told, go up in your helicopter and shoot at anything that moves. Shoot at everything was the order. I'm quoting.
And some of the tanks just arrived by themselves.
And some of the tanks arrived by themselves. We had those two, again, going back to what John said, in an effort to create heroes, a couple of weeks ago, the Israelis put forward in the media these 3 young women who were driving around on October 7th in a tank. And the Israeli spin was, look at this girl power, look at these girl bosses driving a tank and killing terrorists. But what they actually said in the interview on Channel 12 was really disturbing to anyone who is just not completely brainwashed by the Israelis, which is that we were driving around in the tank. No one was giving us orders. We were firing weapons we weren't trained to use and never used before. And when we did encounter someone, she recounts at one of the kibbutzes, a man told her, I think it was an officer or a kibbutz security guard, shoot at that house. And she said, who's in it? Is it terrorists? Is it civilians? And he said, I don't know, just shoot anyway. So if it's 20% friendly fire, yeah, there we go. That's it. They put
oh my God, not that interview. Oh my God.
Example of heroics. But it was really an example of how...
This is very new. Wow. This was just uploaded yesterday. It's like some kind of drone video. Israel's car graveyard becomes a silent memorial to victims of the Hamas attack. From No Comment TV. Let's take a look. Let's see if we can see the memorial. In the description says, Israel's car graveyard becomes a silent memorial to victims of the Hamas attack, stretching for several hundred meters, just 10 kilometers from Gaza. A line of 1,450 bullet-riddled vehicles stand as a grim reminder of the October 7th, 2023 Hamas attack on Israel. Let's tap in. All right, thank you. No comment. First image we see a home with like brick shingled roofing, I think it's called. Ceramic roofing, just the roof is blown off. You can only see the perimeter and maybe some kind of framing, I think it might be called, like some kind of support beams of wood, but you can see all the way into the home. It's like the roof has just been torn off, blown away. Some rubble we're seeing inside someone's home. I mean, just absolutely dust everywhere. It looks like it's been exploded. Like the whole home has been exploded. Yeah, look at this. We have an image of inside someone's home, I assume. You can see the like rebar in the walls of the home. You have a toilet here. It looks like maybe it's a bathroom. This you know, the top left quadrant of this wall has been blown off, as well as the bottom right quadrant. You can see some all the way to the outside. I don't think this is light arms. I don't even think this is RPGs. I don't think it can do that to homes. Look at this. So many bullets and some kind of a larger projectile might have gone through the center here. Looks like a cannonball sized kind of thing. I don't know. I'm not a military guy. Look at this. These are all the cars that have been collected. Look at these cars that have been squished by tanks, I presume. By heavy machinery, you know, like the cat bulldozer kind of things. Caterpillar bulldozer, construction kind of vehicles. I don't think light arms did this. Look at this on the side. It looks like a junkyard. It looks like a trash compactor, metal compactor has done something to these vehicles. And continues with some drone footage. Yeah, this is the memorial itself. Look at this. So there's a wall of cars basically stacked up maybe 5 high. And it just continues in a line. This wall of cars about 5 high. It looks like many civilian vehicles. This one in the front looks more military. It looks like something's like mounted in the back. Maybe for like some kind of gun or something. I don't know. But really, it looks like a junkyard. I cannot explain. You need to look at this if you're listening to the audio. You need to see what these vehicles look like, because I don't think it's consistent with light arms fire, with even exploding drones, even you know, any of Hamas's capability. I don't think it's consistent. And it's very grim and very serious. And, you know, the implications of that are awful, right? That means the Israeli army killed their own civilians. And that's really disturbing. But the fact that they've blocked so much of this evidence, the fact that I believe they burned some of the evidence, as we read in the previous Electronic Intifada article, and the fact that the evidence that we do have is not very consistent. This first image, right, of a home with its roof completely blown off. It looks like there's 2 sections here. Okay, the roof kind of like steps down, and then there's a whole nother perimeter of that roof. Both completely gone. Completely gone. You can, you know, it's like a Barbie house or something. You could reach in. Sorry to be but I mean, it really has been blown completely off. So let's continue with the memorial car graveyard here. It's in Kuma. I believe that's how you would pronounce that. It's Kuma. And this video was from May this year, so the memorial is still there. All these vehicles are still there. It seems they've just captured the narrative somehow. That, you know, all of this damage, all of this collateral damage, all of these civilians being caught in the crossfire was somehow acceptable, or somehow part of the project of the Western Zionist colony, right? I think they're okay with this bloodshed, is what they're ultimately saying. They're okay with all of this happening. They're okay with repackaging it and sugarcoating it not just to the world, but to their own citizens, because they're not happy. They've been protesting, the hostage families have been protesting since October 7th for a ceasefire to stop and get the hostages home. I think that's what I wanted to cover today was this memorial of the vehicles. I think there's a lot of propaganda around this, but I wanted to focus on one specific thing, which was the scale of collateral damage that has been downplayed. Not only by Netanyahu, but by the US government. Because they're so eager to blame this on the bad guys, on the terrorists, quote unquote. But this was their own doing, their own arms, on their own people. They gave the order. And frankly, they've put themselves in this situation of having to defend this indefensible outpost in West Asia. We covered a couple days ago on the last stream that public sentiment is waning for Israel. Their time is limited. And I wonder if in the death throes we will see more violence. I hope not. But if they are this eager to hang on to this, I fear, I'm cautiously optimistic, but I fear the death throes will be violent. I need to do something a little bit less serious before doing the Iran botting article. The Cradle had this really cool article about what was going on Twitter specifically. Manufacturing dissent, how Israel manipulates Iran's Twitter sphere. We're going to read that soon.